Skyhopper, help!
Release her, Animal Vader, or I'll zunk you with my lightsaber!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another cartoon commentary. Joining me is my friend and yours. It's Jason Swang from Rebel Force Radio. How you doing?
Hey, doing great. Looking forward to this.
And it's I really enjoy having you on here and giving you a break from Star Wars, because it's always Star Wars, right?
Thank
Rebel
goodness
Force
for
Radio.
that. Well, let's go this whole half hour or whatever it is and no Star Wars talk, right?
Yeah, so we're gonna queue up Muppet Babies. It's episode 10, Gonzo's video show. It's around. You can find it. It's like Dusty Roads. Find it, baby. And here's your countdown. We're queued up at the very beginning of the 24-minute, 23-second episode. Countdown, 3, 2, 1, play. When I say play, you press play. 3, 2, 1, play. And I'm convinced this is why Disney is buying everything up. They're trying to be able to release a Muppet Babies Blu-ray box set, because of all of the different movie property film footage and all the different episodes, which has kind of put it in legal limbo now until they can just own everything that's in Muppet Babies.
Right. I think some of the problems, is that the agreements that were in place back then are just so archaic and so old. It's like they don't even know if this is something they can put out.
Yeah, I really miss those days, handshake agreement.
Right.
Or something to that effect. We saw
some
indie footage in
the
there
music too. I've heard that music is even a bigger problem sometimes than actual video footage.
So I gotta apologize. We just saw a shot of a TIE fighter. So
where I'm not allowed to reference that because it's Star Wars. No, this is one of my all-time favorite cartoons as a kid. I have so many memories with this. It ran for quite a while.
And this is the Star Wars episode. That's why we jumped to episode 10. I remember watching this episode as a kid. This was before I had even really seen Star Wars in its entirety. So this is actually one of my first exposures to Star Wars. This is why I'm such a fan.
Yeah, right. That's what it took. It took Animal Vader.
With all of the debating that goes on with the Star Wars fan communities, you never see anyone speak up and go, the stuff they do today is just not like that Muppet Babies episode.
No, they don't say it, but I will tell you one thing. I think Muppet Babies was really ahead of its time when you look at shows like Family Guy and The Simpsons, where they do those cutaways. They make a reference and then bang, they cut away to an example of it. I feel like Muppet Babies was one of the first to do that.
Yeah. I remember liking Muppet Babies more than the actual Muppet Show.
Yeah, right. If you were, under a certain age, a lot of times some of the references in the Muppet Show, went over our head. And so the Muppet Babies was actually the Muppets talking to us as kids. And I always thought the voices were really convincing. To me, it just seemed, again, I was probably anywhere between 8 and 12 years old when the show was on, 13 years old. I watched it. I never outgrew it, really. I mean, it became part of my Saturday morning routine. And I just loved it.
It really stood apart from all the other cartoons because of the live footage in it.
Right.
Like even this surfing footage right here, it was all over the place. Like, just because this is the Star Wars episode doesn't mean it's just Star Wars from beginning to end.
Right.
Kind of like a Simpsons episode where the beginning has really nothing to do with the rest of it.
No. And in some of the humor, much like the Muppet Show itself, I think worked on multiple levels. It wasn't just for little tiny kids. Oh, here's Nanny, Barbara Billingsley, Mrs. Cleaver.
So, when we're talking about the voice of Kermit, for me, no one will ever replace Jim Henson. Steve Whitmire did an admirable job, not because he sounded just like Jim, but he had the spirit of Jim. And then some new guy they got now, who's okay. But another, I never hear him mentioned, but the guy who did the voice of Kermit on Muppet Babies. And do you know who that was?
It was Frank Welker.
You're simply the best.
Yeah. Frank Welker. I mean, of course, best known as Fred in pretty much every Scooby-Doo show.
Yeah. And Megatron.
And
That's Megatron as Kermit and Slimer.
yeah, I always feel a little intimidated, Mike, because I'm just not a Transformers guy. I appreciate it, but I don't catch, if it's not Chris Latta, I don't I don't get the reference. But you think about Frank Welker, yeah. So Megatron, Fred, you've got Ray Stantz from the Real Ghostbusters,
and Slimer,
Kermit, and Slimer, right?
Dr. Claw.
Dr. Claw. Oh my gosh.
And Soundwave,
Wow.
which was Dr. Claw, just with a synthesizer on it.
And Frank is still doing it.
He's still the best.
He really is. So they get this video camera, and this reminded me of when I was a kid. And it was really because of seeing this episode of Muppet Babies. Fisher Price had their own version of a video camera called the PXL 2000, and it allowed you to record video on cassette tapes. Do you remember this toy from Fisher Price by chance?
No,
yeah, it's in the 80s. And the reason I wanted it so badly was because I wanted to do what the Muppet Babies did and, create my own TV shows. Of course, I didn't live in a nursery with, 7 or 8 other friends to do it. So I kind of miscalculated there, but the idea was still the same.
Yeah, great show. Easily written off as, oh, come on, Muppet Babies. And the joke has been going on for decades, right? Like,
Right.
What are they going to do? Castlevania babies? What are they going to do? Simpsons babies? But this show encouraged so much imagination.
Yep.
They rarely had the thing, so they would just pretend it.
Right. Right. And the pop culture references I thought were really good for kids too. I mean, this is the epitome, I think, of infotainment or edutainment.
Yeah.
You're getting entertained, but you're learning stuff along the way. I mean, was this, Lawrence of Arabia here, giving the kids.
They're not just sticking to the mid 80s here. They're going far back.
Yeah. Right.
And
is he Valentino, I think, or somebody like that in this bit?
And another familiar voice actor name. I see Howie Mandel was Baby Animal.
Yeah. Yeah, that really threw me because when I was at this time, my knowledge of Howie Mandel was he was that funny guy that would come on, Johnny Carson or some of the late night shows, and I wasn't allowed to watch him because I was too young,
We remember him here in Canada on Bizarre, which was kind of like a Saturday Night Live skit show, but with swearing and nudity. It was really ahead of its time. We were kind of more like England in that sense, where they just let that stuff slide, and he did some stand-up bits that were hilarious.
He comes across the sand dunes here. Yeah, I think this is like some sort of
the music is amazing.
Yeah. They got a hoist piggy with the crane. That probably wouldn't fly today. You think that violates some political correctness? Hey, and they have a sandbox in the house. That would be awesome. I don't think I don't think my mom or my grandma would have gone for that.
This it's been so long since I've watched an actual episode of Muppet Babies, not just like clips here and there, but their room is very similar to the Toy Story room that all the toys are in.
Yeah, it is actually.
Very same vibe too.
Yeah, I probably haven't seen this. I think that it went into syndication, so I would watch it after school when it was in syndication, and then I think the last time it was shown anywhere, I think it was on Nickelodeon, also on syndication, and that was early 90s, and that's probably the last time I've seen an episode of Muppet Babies. But I can remember, like I could have sung that theme song word for word.
And it's really too bad that it's fallen into rights limbo just because of all of the footage issues. There's a lot of good shows that can't come out because of that stuff. Like Werewolf was a great show on Fox, and it's in limbo now because of all the music rights. They don't have the masters, so they can just pull out the old real songs that they don't have the deals for anymore and plop in the covers.
The reference of Fozzie, always getting pelted with the tomatoes. Like, do kids today realize that was a thing? That you threw produce at the unfunny comedians. And I also like that Gonzo is sporting the beret. He's an artiste. Yeah,
artiste.
And he just simped all over poor Piggy. He just loved her. She wouldn't give him the time of day.
Still got the chicken obsession, even at this young an age.
That's true. Yeah, he does.
What is this?
This is some good 80s in the randomness of their costumes. Like, Piggy looks a little bit like Amy Winehouse here. I feel like.
This is the Star Wars episode, right?
I believe so.
Sure, but only 5 minutes. 5 minutes of footage.
Right. Now, of course, you know how easy it must have been for Jim Henson to get permission from George. You know, all it took was probably a very quick phone call. And I mean, George was pretty well known. And, you know, whether it be Seth MacFarlane with the Family Guy or Simpsons or anything. I mean, if George liked what you were doing, he would just let you have at it with the Star Wars footage and IP.
They might have even been under the same roof working on different projects. Hey, George, can I?
Right.
Yeah, whatever. I don't care. Thanks for Yoda. Thanks
but
for
I wonder if, you know, when George saw some of this stuff, if this is sort of kind of what gave him the idea, well, maybe we should do some Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah. Call it episode 1. Clone Wars.
we got to, I don't know if you've done any Ewoks or droids. We should do an Ewoks or droids episode sometime.
Yeah, I totally forgot about those.
Yeah, you're not missing much, but we'll find one good one, you know.
That theme song of Droids by is it Stuart Copeland from the Police? Yeah, man. That's a classic. So
glad they put that
back in. Yeah, they took it out for a while. I think the DVD releases didn't have Trouble Again, but they've put it back in.
Disney Plus has some of them, and
that's cool.
It's on there. And you know, if Muppet Babies, if it was possible to do, it would have shown up on Disney Plus by now. They did remake it, and I don't know if they're still making them, but you know, of course, they went with sort of the CG. Yeah, and I got real excited when I heard about it, and I thought, oh, this will be a nostalgia trip, and it just. It's okay. It just didn't have the heart. Oh, here we go.
Oh, this is it. The green one.
Yep.
For the frog, of course.
All right. It's time to play Star Wars. Wubaka the cookie. And I like he's got double bandoliers.
Yeah.
You know?
Scooter D2.
Oh, yeah.
Kenny Baker was sitting somewhere going, that's not at all how you play that character.
That's far more nuanced. Oh. Boy, Piggy got those. There we go. Animal. Oh. Piggy got those star puffs on the side of her head. Pretty. This is clever, though, right? You know, you take some construction paper, you pop some holes in it with the pencil.
I did it. I did it for a Super 8 film.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Works great, huh?
Long ago on lined paper.
Well, George wrote it first on lined paper.
A teddy bear. I wish they had just foreshadowed a little bit by giving Gonzo a beard and a flannel shirt.
You know, that would have been great. This makes me wonder if this might not be the first Star Wars fan film.
Oh, well, Hardware Wars. That was
Hardware Wars was 70s. Yeah. This is still up there. There's the footage, right? And then, it's going to be a great movie.
It's going to be a trilogy with 3 prequels.
And don't worry, folks. We get to see the movie.
We'll be Rolf Kenobi.
They psych you out a little bit thinking that you're not going to see it, but you're going to see it.
Even before I loved Star Wars, I loved Jedi Luke with a green lightsaber. So Kermit using the green lightsaber was like, yeah, now it's on. Like, I always thought the blue lightsabers were cool, but once I saw that green lightsaber, I was hooked. That guy stands apart.
It was all I wanted when I saw it in the stores, and I got one. I got one for Easter of all holidays. I got my Easter basket, and Sat there like Ralphie on Christmas Story. No,
Put your
thanks
eye
for the
out.
candy. It's all good. And then Granny said, "Oh, I think there's something there behind the couch too that you didn't see that the Easter Bunny brought you." And there it was.
Please tell me
Green
she said
lightsaber.
an elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
Boy, I wish. I wish. No, but you know what? It was implied.
Yeah.
All right, the drive-in.
So is Nanny the Emperor in this one?
Yeah. Can you imagine? Yeah, if she would have put on the old like a black sweater, those socks too. Nanny socks. Animal.
That was more impressive than the Star Destroyer going over the camera. That nose.
The big nose.
Just went on forever. That's okay. That's what people said about New Hope.
Right. Right.
Well, the original
Boring.
cut. The original cut.
Right. All right. George, what are you thinking? This sucks. Oh, wow. Of
That
course,
must have been because this is before home video. You could watch Star Wars on home video. This was your first chance to watch Star Wars on a small screen.
yeah, it was. I certainly didn't have, HBO at this time. I didn't have it on VHS because they were so expensive to buy at that time. These are some pretty good costumes, though, I will say.
Whoa, this is wild.
Yeah. Did you even know that this was called the Tantive 4 at this time? Like, no, it's Princess Leia's ship.
The intercutting with the actual
Yeah.
footage.
Oh, there we go. And then,
Got
of
the
course,
sound
yeah,
effect.
there it is.
That's
They got
actually
the real
not
sound
a,
effects.
that's not an actual Ben Burt R2 sound effect. That's Frank Welker.
Right.
He's just that good.
He's that amazing.
Yeah. Should we ask Lucasfilm for that? No. Frank can do it. Beep,
Frank,
beep,
yeah.
beep, beep. And the lightsaber sounds. The Vader sound.
It wasn't that guy from Police Academy, was it? No, it was Frank Welker.
Michael Winslow.
Of course, Piggy has to have the pink version of the iconic Leia gown.
Is he holding his nose?
He was. She's so mean to him.
That's
No,
an
she
optimist.
shared her popcorn with
That's
you.
an optimist for you.
Yeah, really.
He is perfect for the Dark Lord of the Sith.
All right, they're cutting through. I love the laugh.
Is he eating a blue hot dog? What?
Remember this part in A New Hope?
He's doing the twin sons pose. Hey, whoever did this had seen Star Wars a few times.
Oh, yeah. I joked about it, being the first fan film, but it might be the first real kind of trying to think, like, is this the first real pop culture sort of parody take?
I would say so. Like,
I mean, maybe
for
there were
sure.
sketch things like on the Richard Pryor show and things like that. But as far as like, a beat for beat sort of retelling.
Yeah, like a Family Guy type of
Right.
thing.
Except
I don't think
more
can't think of
tasteful.
anything before it. Yeah. I mean, it still retains the spirit, right? It's Henson's
Right.
spirit. It's not snide. It's not being cynical and making fun of it. It's
Not at all.
It's still fun.
This was me and my cousins growing up. I mean, for years, this is what we did. We would play with our action figures for a little while, and when that got tiring, then we would just be the characters.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun.
One of the saddest things I see is some people feel the need to justify their love for sentimental things by being snarky. And
Right.
what's cool about this is that there's really no snark. It's just fun, and they're loving it. They're playing
Yes.
Star Wars, not mocking it.
Uh-oh. And of course, this is this is
It's a
Ozzy's
tomato.
worst nightmare because it's a giant tomato.
Death tomato. That's no moon. That's a fruit. Vegetable. Fruit. I don't know.
Now notice that up to this point, there's no Han Solo character.
Yeah. I wonder why.
Well,
Gotta leave
you'll
someone
find
out.
out.
Oh. Me, your father.
Oh, I remember this. He really gets himself.
Oh, he's
Yeah,
chopping
there
his gun into the trash compactor.
Me win.
Me win. I believe that's a line right out of New Hope.
That's right.
After he kills the rebels, me win.
George is like pure poetry.
Oh, here he comes, the old
That's
scoundrel.
right.
Who is this going to be? Of course.
Gonzolo,
Gonzolo.
if I remember. Right.
Gonzolo.
And I do like the 8-ball for the gear shift.
This is awesome. Oh, he's got the X-Wings with him.
Yeah, I mean, they cut a lot out, but the gist
Faster,
is there.
more intense.
You get the swing,
He
swing across the chasm. Doesn't quite work out.
got the wrong one. Do you think George has ever wanted to re-edit this? Special edition it?
Muppet Babies Star Wars Episode Special Edition. Yeah, I was never really happy with it, It's not I don't think that's a real Ralph McQuarrie design, that ship, but you figure that this was just something
Maybe.
that they had, in the nursery, right?
Might have been
It was
one
in
of
the toy
Ralph's
box.
one of Ralph's doodles when he was 5, maybe.
Poor Fozzie.
Oh,
But I do like that all these things, outside of the footage, what did they have? They had a tomato. They had a spaceship. Uh-oh.
so because he told a bad joke, the
Yeah.
tomato.
This is Unleash the Fury.
This is like race dance level of oops with the Stay
Yeah,
Puft
right.
Marshmallow Man.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, that's also Star Wars footage right there. Didn't make it to the final
No,
cut of
no,
the
no.
film. We got to lose the tomato footage. Doesn't make sense. Use the Force. I love the screen.
You really gotta-
It's like
He's
he's constipated.
right? It's all those tomatoes.
It's kind of like maybe a peek into what a young Yoda would have looked like. in
Yeah,
his
that's
early
right.
days.
Little frog. I mean, George calls him, little frog from time to time.
Yeah.
You can't have that little frog jumping around. Oh, and the big cliffhanger ending.
Oh,
Oh, they loved it.
until they all died in the sequel trilogy.
Can you imagine the grizzled old mean Kermit Skyhopper?
Leave me alone. Get off my lawn.
We find out that Gonzolo abandoned his family because he would have finally gotten Piggy.
Man, as a big fan of the original trilogy, I tend to not really call myself a Star Wars fan anymore because there's so much of it, and I just feel like, well, I'll specify the Mandalorian and the original trilogy, and Han Solo movie was cool and stuff. But I really like the purity of Star Wars, the finiteness of it before the prequel trilogy came out. I really love the books and the magazines, the comics that came out before Phantom Menace, because that really changed a lot of things. This is awesome because it's in that kind of the dark times, right, that people talk about, where Star Wars was.
It was the beginning of the dark times. I mean, I think this show, I believe this is probably like 84, 85. And that was pretty much, 85 was it. And all we had was, that's interesting, Marvel connection. Marvel Productions was the,
Wow.
oh, here's the little stinger. You got to end credit sequence. He always did that after the credits. Go bye-bye. That was a lot of fun. It still holds up. And I do like the idea that, things like the Death Star was a tomato, that the one ship was probably just a random ship that they had in their toy box, the notebook paper, as the crawl. You're right when you said innocence. It's that that's when we looked at it with this sense of wonder. And there was something, and it's really hard to describe, I think, to some people. There was something almost, because it went dry for a lot of us, and at that time in our life, so I'm 8 years old or 6 years old when Jedi comes out. So I was sort of on the end of that generation. And so I was still wanting more Star Wars when everyone else who might have been 6 when the first one came out, they were now starting to, they're preteen or teenager, and they were maybe ready for Star Wars to go away, but I wasn't. I felt like I just got it. I just got here. And then it goes dark for a while, and that almost sort of built the mystique to me, that you couldn't just turn on TV anytime and watch it like you could Star Trek. Like there was something really, really special about Star Wars. And it is a bit saturated today, and I understand why. It's an expensive IP, and they got to make their money back and all of that. And I would say I can't think of a Star Wars film or television show that I didn't walk away enjoying some aspect of it. Yeah, obviously there's some that's better than others, and the sequel trilogy is sort of a punching bag for me.
Wait, they made more?
Yeah, but you can skip them, Mike. Anything, yeah, you can skip them. And I think the reason, or one of the reasons why I feel somewhat justified in punching at the sequel trilogy was because there was no excuse for what they did. It wasn't as though they didn't have the actors. It wasn't as though they didn't have the money. It wasn't as though they didn't have, all of the resources that you could possibly want. So that's where I feel somewhat justified,
Yeah. Well, it's all about what's the motivation. What's your motivation? And when I was doing student films, I was doing helping on student films because I just wanted to learn more about filmmaking. And a lot of the stuff I turned down because it was very dark and depressing. And I would ask people, why are you doing this? And it's about, well, this is really going to be grisly and scary. And like, yeah, but this is going to be a lot of time, your time, my time, everyone's time, unpaid. What's the point? What's your end goal here? Well, it's, it's to shock people, I guess. I would hear that, or it's to scare people, or, depress them. I'm like, oh, you're that kind of auteur. It's like, wouldn't it be better to do something that maybe acted as a bit of escapism for a family illness, or,
Sure.
dad out of work, or, entertainment. It's nice when entertainment is a little bit of a break, just a vacation for people who can't go on vacation. And there were a lot of people in my personal experience that didn't really get that. They were like, I guess they got to go on vacation and take a break from
Right.
from the crap in their life. And so when it came time to helm a movie, that never really crossed their mind. But it's always on my mind on my channel that it's a break. It should be a break from the difficult stuff in life. Not everyone is blessed to have like a completely healthy family and, bills always paid and a secure job and stuff like that. Some people are going through some real challenges.
We had
never-ending
we had this debate on our Mandalorian after show because, and I love the Mandalorian, but I was really frustrated at how the New Republic was being portrayed. You had New Republic and not just, you know, a cabal, a secret cabal within the New Republic that was trying to, you know, maybe destroy it from within. You had what seemed to be rank and file New Republic officers, officials doing things that really put them on the same moral playing field as the Empire.
Yeah.
And it really just bothered me. And I said, well, what was the fight for if that's the case? Where are the heroes?
Yeah.
And, you know, immediately, you know, listeners started sending real world examples. Well, you know, after World War II, the Nazis, and we did this and we did that. And I said, okay, thank you. You know, thanks for the history lesson, but this is in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
And
it's not a documentary.
Right. Exactly. And I wanted some of that simplistic black and white heroes and bad guys to emerge from this. I felt that it was somewhat answered with the emergence of Captain Teva,
Mm-hmm.
and him kind of acknowledging some of the rot that's going on within the New Republic. So, you know, but I think they need to be careful, because there is, you know, some may call it, you know, naivete, but I don't necessarily look at that way. I think that there's real utility in understanding that there is good, there is evil. Yes, there are things that are in between, but I think in the case of grand myth and the type of storytelling that Star Wars has been so great at over the years, and what really gave it its legacy, is that, you know, more black and white fairy tale style of storytelling.
It's like putting out a comedy that's not funny. That's actually so intentionally. It's not like jokes that didn't land, but it's like putting out a comedy, got Jim Carrey and Will Ferrell in it, and cutting a trailer that has funny music and funny clips and stuff. And then you watch the most depressing, serious movie ever intentionally done like that.
Right.
And it's like, well, but that's what it is. Like, don't use the word comedy then. It's perfectly fine to make a movie like that and label it, put it in the drama section of Blockbuster if they were still around, right? Don't call it a comedy. So that's my deal with Star Wars. Like, don't call it Star Wars if it doesn't adhere to the most basic. Don't need to debate it for an hour. Star Wars it's not even a debate. It's not even a one sentence debate. It's a feeling for me.
Yeah. Right.
And when you said earlier about the sequel trilogy, I agree 100%, because they had the actors. It was a conscientious choice to never put them together, to never give us that feeling of camaraderie, of fun, of the roller coaster thrill ride, of some of the challenges, but they overcome, they grow, some pick up some scars along the way. You know, maybe a hand would have to be lost somewhere along the way, or it's not Star Wars. It's not about subverting expectations and giving people something they don't expect and all that crap. I think that gets overthought of way too much in the movie industry. Just too much humming and awing and sitting and debating about, well, you know, what's the term they use? Member berries, and people just want what they know. It's not that people want what they know. People want to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
What if you don't want to feel good? There's something wrong with you, and you don't need Star Wars or any movie. You need a therapist if you don't want to feel good.
Right.
That's really, like, you need an actual therapist, a professional to speak to. Star Wars is fun. It put a lot of smiles on faces, many smiles on faces, and continues to. There's a lot of Star Wars that still does that. Because there were some stuff that's been put out that has put some frowns on people's faces, a lot of people's faces. Can't just ignore them and say, oh, well, you know, it's not for you. It's like, okay, you know, we try. I mean, we try to be respectful about it. I mean, it's possible to not like something and at the same time not disrespect a person who loves it.
Right.
And
right.
Not just is it possible, but it's necessary.
It's absolutely necessary.
When someone loves it, you go, awesome. You know what? I'm so glad to hear that. And I can't love it because of how I feel about it.
Right.
But you're kind of my gateway to being okay with it for at least as long as I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
So tell me about why you love it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, because what we try to do with our show is, you know, we try to be a podcast for all Star Wars fans. And so we don't we don't make it our mission to try and convince you to like or dislike anything. We give our honest and in some cases, very raw thoughts about something that we just saw. We just saw The Mandalorian. There's been many times that I have just watched Bad Batch or just watched Mando, and within 15 minutes of wrapping that, I'm firing it up and we're doing a live stream. So it's that sort of stream of consciousness, first blush, and things
out. It's like the old days, hanging out with buddies and talking about it, or jumping on the phone and go, "Did you see that? Yeah, I saw that."
Right.
Yeah, that's what's awesome about the immediate reactions to it, and then things change over time too. It's not like, you must deal with it all the time. Someone will look up like an old show from like 4 years ago. You said this about like, well, that's what I thought about it. We
came out of the theaters, for each of the sequel films. We came out of the theaters. By the time the third one came out, there was a little bit of cynicism going into it, because the 2-year gap between 8 and 9, that's really when fandom just melted down and kind of busted apart, sadly. So it was hard not to carry some of that in with you. I love when Yoda says to Luke, it's one of my favorite lines in Empire Strikes Back, when Luke is talking about the cave. He says, what's in there? And Yoda says, only what you take with you.
So profound.
And Luke is about to remove his weapons, but he keeps them on.
Yeah.
So he's taking in aggression. He's taking in fear. He's taking in all of these things. And so it was hard not to take in some of those things with the 9th one. But nevertheless, coming out of 7, we did a reaction show immediately following, and we were just bouncing off the walls because we were back on the Millennium Falcon. We got that great cliffhanger, where Luke reunited with his old lightsaber, and he's going to take on the new generation and train them, and she's going to have her own hero's journey and all of that. And then after 8, you wanted to think, at least I did, that there was a plan. I still had in my mind the naive notion that they had figured this out.
You're like one of the Muppet
Disney,
babies,
right?
Just
I was one of the Muppet babies, right? Yeah. And it was really between the release of 8 and 9 that it became very clear that was indeed the problem. Was, from a creative standpoint, they did not have a plan. And so that's really when it kind of came off the rails for me. But you're right. I have a very good friend that loves Luke Skywalker's character in Episode 8. He's dealt with a lot of issues with depression, and so he's getting something out of that version of Luke Skywalker, and I have no problem with that. I couldn't have a problem with that. It's not my Luke Skywalker. It's not my version of Luke, but if he gets some encouragement and gets some good feelings out of that, so be it. I'm not going to sit down and say, okay, here's a 2-hour podcast of why you're wrong. That's not. Yeah. And we wouldn't have many listeners if that was the case.
And that's an awesome thing about Marvel's new multiverse thing that they've introduced. In addition to being like the most brilliant way of recasting people, bringing people from other continuities, how do we get Toby into the new movie? It's brilliant in the behind the scenes business aspect of it, but it's also really valuable in order to get a society that is really, well, I don't know, maybe it's a vocal minority, but people who are not cool with saying, okay, cool, agree to disagree. And the multiverse is saying, look, this reality is legitimate and that reality is legitimate. They can both coexist simultaneously. So you like the books, the Zahn books, that's your sequel trilogy. Awesome. You like the movies? Awesome. You can both like what you like without destroying the other person and what the other person loves. It's possible. So I hope that it leads people to be more accepting of other people's feeling towards the stuff they don't like. It might not make you love the thing that you don't like, but it'll make you okay with the thing that you don't like, because it's like, yeah, you know what? You go play in your sandbox, and I've got my Dark Times sandbox that I really love, and I make exceptions. Like Mandalorian, I'll watch that every week, and even if one episode isn't the best episode ever, I don't mind. I don't need every week to be one of the top 3 Mandalorian episodes ever. I'm very used to letting go and moving on. So right now it's basically reflex. It's a habit of mine to watch something that's crap and go, okay, let's move on. Let's see what else you got. Ahsoka coming out? Cool. Let's give it a try.
You know, we grew up at a time when Star Wars sort of meant scarcity. You know, we got those 3 precious films that we had to live, you know, we got to live with for almost a decade before we saw anything else. And there were a few little drippings here and there. We talked about droids and Ewoks and things and the Caravan of Courage and all that, but really, you know, that was it. And then George says, I'm going to do these prequels. After that, I'm done. I'm out. Done.
I quit.
So you see the first prequel. You're like, okay. Oh God, there's only 2 more left. Oh boy, they really got to step it up because this one was a little bit slow. Let's do the next one. And they do the next one. And you're like, oh my God, there's only one more, and Anakin still hasn't turned to the dark side, and he and Obi-Wan are still friends, and you know now he's with this girl. And then
where's the Clone War?
Right, where's right? So you had this sense that with everyone, it was doom. It was
doomsday clock is ticking.
The clock
down.
was ticking.
Yeah,
exactly. And the one great thing about the sort of the Disney era is that. And Mike, it lives up to exactly what you're saying. You watch Mando. If it's a great episode, you're happy. If it's a so-so episode, there's always next week. If you didn't like the Kenobi series, okay, there's always Ahsoka. Maybe you'll love Ahsoka. Maybe you'll love Skeleton Crew. You know, maybe you'll love season 3 of Mando. Maybe you'll love Bad Batch. So it is getting
Muppet
to be
Babies.
a much bigger universe, or Muppet Babies.
Let's not forget one of the actual absolute gems of the Star Wars cinematic universe.
You know, for me, I mean, it's part of that vintage era and that vintage experience. But hey, we said that we weren't going to talk Star Wars on this show, so
somehow
here we go.
Everything comes back.
Old habits.
It comes back to Star Wars or wrestling.
That's true. That's true. But no, this has been awesome. Thanks for letting me re-experience it. And there's nobody I'd rather re-experience that nostalgia hit buzz than with you. So thank you.
Well, thank you for joining me. It's been a blast, and I kind of want to keep hunting through the Muppet Babies archives. I don't know if there was an Indiana Jones episode. Maybe there's just like a quick clip or something.
When you sent me the message and asked me if I wanted to redo this, to do this, I specifically didn't watch the episode in advance. I wanted to see it with you, and have it be kind of fresh. I thought, because there's another episode of the Muppet Babies where their TV goes out and they take a big cardboard box, and they cut out the front of the box, and then they go inside the box and they act out their favorite TV shows. And so you get like I Love Lucy, with Kermit and Piggy. You get Weirdo Trek with Gonzo, and it's Captain Kirkmit. That would be another fun one to do. So I thought for a second that was the episode that we were going to do. I thought that's when they did the Star Wars thing, but it's when Nanny gives them the camcorder, which you do when you borrowed someone's camcorder. You give it to a bunch of babies to play with. What could go wrong? Especially the weirdo.
Yeah. Give it to the weirdo to helm the project. Whether there is or isn't, I don't know, but definitely got to do some droids and Ewoks
for
some
sure
point down the road as well. If you're not sick of Star Wars by this point, hey man, if you want to, we could always do another James Bond Jr.
Right.
Bond. James Bond Jr.
Yeah, after that, Mike sent me a carded James Bond Jr. action figure that is standing proudly behind my my 12-inch Sean Connery Dr. No, or excuse me, Goldfinger.
I'm sure he had one too.
Oh, I'm sure he did.
He might have buried him with it. It's pink. The color's pink. But yeah, absolute blast. Thank you again so much for joining me. And for everyone out there, you got to check out Rebel Force Radio. Regardless of what Star Wars you love, if you love any Star Wars, check out Rebel Force Radio, because They are my friend and yours as well. So visit their YouTube channel, on their website, podcast, several different ways to listen to Rebel Force Radio. Jason and Jimmy Mack, just the Force is strong with them, so definitely check them out. Thank you so much, Jason. Nerdmas Day. May the Force be with you.